Hello, thanks for coming here. I'm a little sorry we didn't get the mountain dating app, but like, really cool stuff. Yeah, so this is a talk about a project we did at the Washington Post. This is a 2025 talk about the 2024 Eclipse. I was not at last NACIS, so I'm glad everyone here is still excited about eclipses. You can follow the QR code there to check out the piece. I think it's paywalled, but just in case it is and you can't see it, here's a little animation for anyone who hasn't seen it. I did print it out in DC and then forgot it, so sorry about that. But effectively, this was a project we did in addition to a lot of other eclipse coverage where we wanted to kind of show where the eclipse was going over the North America, and also just a couple of like fun facts of places people could see the eclipse from and kind of about it. And so eclipse mapping is well-trodden territory, as evidenced by the fact that last NACIS there were 2 talks about it, and the bottom one there is New York Times making this exact same point on their second slide. There's a lot of eclipse maps out there, and in a lot of ways, like, this is a news story that is a little bit of a rarity in that, one, you know it's coming, you know it's going to be a big deal and people are going to care about it, but then at the same time you also have pretty well-established styles to follow, which is to say, this is another eclipse map we made, and we made a whole bunch of similar ones like it, and there's a lot of ones made in terms of just like kind of a basic graphic to do. Like when there's a wildfire, you'll do a perimeter thing of it. When elections happen, you'll do election results maps. There's kind of some standardized things that people make, and while there's innovation, there's always innovation to be done on those kind of things. When you have a story like this, there's also a hunger for something that's just a little bit weirder. And so this project actually began, for me at least, in terms of just a more of a style I wanted to do. I thought for a long time kind of doing that little cross-sections really neat and kind of replicating the feeling of like going to a national park or a museum where they have those really cool little dioramas set up. And I will also note that as you're looking at this, my contribution to this project was very much the map at the bottom. I get to work with giants, and they all helped out make this all happen. Kevin Shaw took the coding, Emily Ang edited it, Lauren and Su Yu Chen helped out with the text as well as feedback on the map itself, and Tim and Laris also helped out with feedback on the map. So this is not just my project, and it's only possible because of all of their help. I'm also going to pre-warn that in a lot of ways this is kind of a workflow talk, more so than terrain, because I use Blender for it, but really to do this really terribly, terribly long map, it required quite a bit of finessing between programs. So just give a quick roadmap that I'm going to go into here. First step was to kind of slice up the eclipse into smaller manageable chunks, style it all in Photoshop, bring each of those chunks into Blender, merge them into a long file once again in Photoshop, and then finish up with labels in Illustrator. So to start out, we have our ingredients. We have the eclipse path. It is very narrow and very long. Goes from Mexico all the way up to Newfoundland up there. In order to kind of slice it up, I'm sure there's like an ArcGIS or a QGIS function I'm not aware of, but I found a thing on Stack Overflow where you just generate thousands and thousands of random points in a shape, and then you k-cluster those together to get nearest neighbors, create a centroid based off that, and then make a Veroni diagram of it to get equal slices of an original polygon. It's on Stack Overflow. I didn't want to like do little slides for that, but again, like I didn't figure that out. I found instructions online. Next, I ended up buffering it a little bit. Whoa, spooky. It's October. So I knew I wanted to kind of join these together, and I needed each slice to have some overlap for that to kind of give myself some wiggle room. So buffered all those and once again cropped it by a little bit. I think it's maybe like 25, 50 miles. Not entirely sure how much it was. And now that I had each of those slices, I also had bounding boxes. So this, again, it's a lot of data. It's a really large span of space that I'm trying to do here. So trying to download 1 DEM of that entire thing would just be an absolute nightmare, just file size-wise. Not very practical. So this is a Google Earth Engine. Highly recommend it if you haven't used it before. But effectively, with those bounding boxes, I gave it a list of the GeoJSONs and then told it to download SRTM for each of those bounding boxes. So then went ahead and got each of the elevations for it. And also did the same thing through Google Earth Engine for getting the Sentinel-2 imagery for it, which is also like cloudless. And when it comes to this, there's probably a couple of better possible resources for it, but Google Earth Engine does a really nice job of kind of stitching together different imagery, and because you can loop over things, I can get them in those little chunks. I think I did it between the summer months, so it's effectively kind of a combination of imagery over the course of, I don't know, July to or April to September probably. But because it's a composite and Sentinel does fly over in bands, you end up with these kind of hard edges where the imagery is kind of joining together. So I ended up doing this, I think, for a couple of years, and then in Photoshop went through and kind of picked out which parts to use for which part of the country so I could get rid of some of the hard edges there. Next, I went ahead and got all of the vector data I could for it from both Mexico, Canada, and the US for like water features, peaks, urban areas, national parks, Native American territories, roads, state lines, all that stuff. And using MapShaper, went ahead and did some post-processing on each of those. So some of them got simplified, and then also assigned each of them a type. And that was done so I could use MapShaper's ability to export the stuff out as an SVG. And this styling looks terrible, but it's consistent. So anytime I needed to update the data by running that previous script, I could get this export out right away, and consistently that size and always those colors. One reason you could like style the map probably in the previous step, but for the most part, I knew features were going to be fairly consistent. There was a couple of cases where it was hard to find certain features in Mexico and Canada, so I think I updated the roads a couple of times when I found some better data sets, but for the most part, the water is not going to change between each of those things. So from that SVG, pulled that into Photoshop and basically overlaid it onto the satellite imagery that I had. Part of the reason to do this in Photoshop is just it handles drop shadows and just blending a little bit nicer than Illustrator does. And also just works, like I wanted to kind of bake it into just one image for the eventual Blender overlay, so just getting it done in here was nice. So then brought it into Blender, which we've heard a lot about at this conference. It's a great software. Nothing too fancy here, but the fact that I was doing it in different slices paid quite a few dividends in that the elevation profiles are very different depending on which slice you're looking at. So in Mexico, there's a fairly mountainous region right there. There's the Appalachians, the Midwest, pretty flat. But because I was doing this in slices, like 8 total, I was able to kind of finesse how much vertical exaggeration was happening on each one, so that the Appalachians weren't terrible, and the Midwest wasn't completely flat. Because even though it would be a little bit more accurate to keep it consistent between those, when the thing looks completely flat, it looks a lot faker, oddly enough. So this was, I think, a test image that I think I used to kind of pitch the project originally, but you can kind of see there a little bit of the Appalachians. And this is also about the step where we were kind of doing a lot more of the style finessing. One big fun thing about this project is that usually when we're doing satellite imagery, we want to keep it really knocked back. You really want to keep it like either really dark or really light so that the labels are really legible on top of it. But in this case, we were kind of doing a lot of the annotations above the map, and the thing was kind of more of a visual representation of the area it's flying over. So we got to be a little bit more saturated, a little bit more detailed. And again, we did a lot of finessing. This was, I think, one of the early renders, and over time we kind of realized that like keeping the shadows a little bit more dull, keeping the elevation a little bit more tethered to reality just looked a lot nicer. I think this was one example of trying to use the Midwestern elevation for the US-Mexico border, and what kind of made these lovely Final Fantasy-looking mountains there. Another fun fact, you can actually use Blender from the terminal. So again, one consistent theme through this project is that I want to open as few programs as possible. I don't want to have to open up Photoshop and save every image. I don't want to have to go through Blender 8 times and save a thing. It turns out, you can run it from the terminal, and did a loop there that just renders the scene for me from the file. So you have to set up the file, but you can just run it here. And we tried out a couple other ideas with this at this point. I don't know how well this conveys with the projector, but Tried like a pinhole idea briefly, blurring the top and bottom. This is kind of a photographic technique you'll see to make things look small. Also had the idea of maybe even using that for like showing the partial eclipse that's on both sides of it, but this is already admittedly a slightly weird way to represent the eclipse path, so we want to keep it as simple as possible. And in general, like there was just a lot of back and forth on very minute things for each of these, like just the saturation, the watercolor. There was a lot of finessing happening on this one, but ultimately it got to a point where we were pretty happy with it. Then bring the whole thing into Photoshop. So this is where all those slices get combined. And at this point, once again, like I want to open this file up I want to spend as little time as possible moving files around and all that stuff. So each of the layers in there is just a dragged in file and linked to the original. So if I rerun the Blender thing, these are automatically updated. Each of the slices is effectively just doing like layer styling and masks to kind of get them to connect as it goes along. So you can see one of the masks there to get the overlay. And then at this spot, I also added a little bit of a mask up top to get rid of any of the leftover residual things from like a Blender. And then also went ahead and hand drew the little bottom side there. I'm sure there's a way to do that in Blender, but it was easy enough to just use the eyedropper, make it a little darker, and scribble in there. And like the last touch on this, which this really seems hard to see on the projector, so sorry, but on the bottom there's a very slight reflection that we added by just taking that bottom row, vertically flipping it, making it dark, and blurring it a little bit. I feel like that kind of gives it a lot of a grounding feel and makes it look a little bit more realistic. So that is our stupidly long Photoshop file. Now, we can finally add labels to the darn thing, and unfortunately this thing is too long for Illustrator. The light gray thing you're seeing there is the boundary. That's not the artboard size. That is the overall, I guess, container for Illustrator. So I had to cut it into 2 slices in order to get it in there. As we were kind of doing it, started by doing a little bit of a traditional, just straight up labels, but really liked the way that it looked when you kind of skewed them a little bit. It just kind of adds a little bit of movement, as well as just, again, looks a little bit more realistic, like you're looking at like a little model. Also did the same thing for the highway shields, which I'm pretty happy about. We did end up cutting a few of these. It was not quite a ring of fire around Indianapolis, but still brings me joy. And I will say one quick note on like the satellite imagery side of this. This is a trick from I don't know who originated it, but Laris did this a lot. But when it comes to urban areas, particularly if like the satellite imagery doesn't have to be, if it's not of a specific like time or place, desaturating the urban areas is a really lovely way to still get at that sense that it is a city in that region without having to do a whole outline around it. And finally, we added a little locator in the bottom because the north is in a weird place here, right? And we also wanted to have a little bit of a path that shows readers where they are and how far they have to go yet on here. Yeah, so this is the final map. You see it's fairly bright. Little north arrow in the bottom. In hindsight, I probably would have made that a little bit more visible, but passing along to the US-Mexico border. We also added, again, because of all the stuff I'm doing to this map, adding a scale bar is somewhat nonsensical, but we still want to kind of convey a sense of how far people have traveled. So at various state borders and country borders, we add a little ticker at the bottom that counts both how much distance has passed so far, as well as how many people live within the area that has been covered so far. Also added like for regions kind of like the Midwest here, or not quite Midwest, we added a national forest layer in order to kind of get at where there are national parks and where there's less cities, I guess, out there. You can see Indianapolis there. You and I now both know there was once a ring, but it's up to Buffalo and the Great Lakes, and over to Appalachia. The satellite imagery was just really nice and saturated. I was pretty happy with that. And we ended the map up in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. The eclipse did actually pass into Newfoundland, but I believe one of the editors at some point decided that it would basically be another scroll of like empty water, and we weren't really sure what to put in there. It's already a fairly long piece, so we made the call to fade it out at that point, and then allude to it in text instead. We did a couple of tests for some promo images for it. None of these saw the light of day. We just ended up doing screenshots, but now they are seeing the light of day. Just, yeah, not a, I understand why we didn't go with them, but they're fun. And anytime you do something like this, again, it's admittedly a very kind of different, it's a different kind of presentation. Anytime someone sees your work, honestly, that's a compliment to itself. You'll get some people that are just like, this is weird, what are you doing? But you also get people that are also quite, appreciative, and, you take the good and the bad, it's great. Oh, lost it. Where'd it go? I'm sorry, I lost my presentation. There we go. So I actually did see the eclipse. I saw it up in the Great Lake region. This is over Niagara Falls. I don't necessarily recommend going to the Great Lakes to see an eclipse. It is very cloudy. But it is still absolutely beautiful and amazing. I highly recommend catching an eclipse when you can. I don't know if it conveys super well in this video or if it's the processing on the video, but seeing the sky get dark that fast is weird and wild. And I'm also going to be seeing the 2026 eclipse in Iceland. So if anyone has any tips for me in terms of things to go check out in Iceland, please let me know. But if you guys have any questions for me, happy to take them.
Questions?
What were some of the actual numbers that you used for the vertical exaggeration?
Oh,
And how much did they differ?
I'd have to pull them up. I don't actually remember, but it wasn't too considerable. But yeah, the Midwest, I didn't want it to look like there were mountains there, but it's hilly, so it was different. I can let you know afterwards.
Okay. Yeah, it was cool to see you switching it up based on the terrain. I really like that.
Did you pull all of your kind of base layer data? Is that all out of OSM?
No, it's. I don't think I did. I'm not sure if any of the data is OSM necessarily. A lot of it is government data for the roads and administrative lands and all that. I think it was predominantly stuff from the government.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Did you get any complaints from anyone in Newfoundland for cutting it short? Or were they fully unaware?
I don't know if they were there, but people did complain about that. And it's in the text. I don't know,
We have time for another question? Yes.
Since you already knew this was going to happen, how long did it take you in total to do this?
Probably about 3 weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Again, that's what I was kind of trying to share with having all the colleagues on this. I didn't do the coding. I didn't do the part that lets this work as a horizontal. I got to just work on this map part of it. So that's a large reason why I was able to do it there. But.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Dylan.
Thank you.